It's me again, and continuing my little series on Windows operating systems. This video, I'm going to talk about Windows XP, because, let's face it, I think next to Windows 7, this was likely one of the best versions of Windows out there. So many people used it. And of course, yes, I know there's no more support for this. Go away. So what I'm going to be showing you here is Windows XP Home Edition, 32-bit edition, with Service Pack 3. Windows XP was very interesting. Instead of just putting a little bit of paint and a couple of bits of duct tape on the operating system, they basically rebuilt Windows from the ground up. This was the first version of Windows that was a complete standalone operating system. We went basically from DOS with a shell on top of it to a series of hybridized operating systems to an operating system. And okay, little messages popped up. As you can see, of course, one of the biggest differences, unlike the previous versions, this one started up with a vast, beautiful wallpaper instead of the very limited selection, and mostly it was just patterns. Oops. Well, that happened. Let me try that again. So one of the most obvious differences was Windows XP. When you loaded it up, you were greeted with this wonderful panoramic view of a field and clouds and blue sky. It was a really beautiful wallpaper, unlike the the blank monocolor, just a color, usually kind of an off green. And for wallpaper, you had these little squares that would, when you put the tile selection, it would make a pattern in the background, which could be good, bad, or headache-inducing, depending on which pattern you used. You still had that option, of course, with Windows XP, but this was the one that really brought it out. You can see visually there were some other aspects that were really good. I didn't show you on the last video with the 9X series. You will notice that the icons and the titles of the icons meld in, whereas the text in the 9X series sort of, there was a little block that showed the background color, and it just looked really wonky. But this was they got rid of that. They improved the graphics capability. They added, well, I don't know if it was in the first versions, but at least here for Service Pack 3, you have it would set up your updates. You had Windows Security. You still had your volume control. This has to do with the virtual machine, so we don't even need to worry about that. You can see the Start button looks markedly different. and the menu in and of itself has been given a redo. It looks a lot better. It also introduced Windows Messenger, which was, as it says, it was a messenger service. You also had a version of Windows Movie Maker, which I think they kept making different versions at least up until Windows 7. I have no idea why they've stopped on that one. But for people like me who don't have the funds to get a real editing program, this was what you made do with. There was, once again, I'm going to go into compartmentalizing. There was also default programs. You know, your browser, your email, you could set whatever you wanted as your default. And you had your documents and pictures. You had libraries for your music and everything. By the time XP came out, digital music was really gaining steam, gaining a lot of popularity. And so Microsoft acknowledged this by giving you a library so you could have quick access to your music. And to find your other programs, you would put in all programs, and you would have, you know, important programs. They would be up here. You could actually add programs. If you know your most used programs, you could add them up into here. Of course, you had your accessories. You could get your system tools, you know, entertainment and all that. Games, of course. Here's what, you know, came with, you know, the ever-present Minesweeper. Again, it came with a little thing where you could put in programs that would load upon startup. You had yet another update of Internet Explorer. I think this is right around the time I found out about Firefox. So that actually became my default. I was using Firefox at the time. Windows Media Player got an update. Remote Assistance. This was, I think probably other versions did have some form of remote assistance, but this was the one that really was. It's the first one I remember that put it in a very prominent location where it could be seen. As far as functionality, I mean, it was great. It was great. I mean, it had really good backward compatibility capabilities. If I recall, I'm going to look and see if I can find this. There. The Program Compatibility Wizard. This was great because a lot of people who were migrating from the 9X series to the XP series, or rather XP, I should just say, their big question was, will my programs for Windows 95, Windows 98, and Windows ME, you know, will they still work on XP? By and large, they did, but if there were any issues, they put in this compatibility wizard, which, for the larger part, did work. It did help a lot of the older programs to work smoothly in Windows XP. I'm also certain, I probably should have checked before, but I'm just going to go on my pretty bad memory. Here's another thing, the command prompt. This, I believe, was the first Windows OS that called it the command prompt. They used to refer to it as the MS-DOS prompt, all the way up to ME, I believe. And from XP onwards, it was referred to as the command prompt because they were no longer dealing with, as I said before, they're no longer dealing with a shell, nor a hybridized system. Windows XP was its own operating system, which, you know, that was pretty good. that sort of stability was, that was something that people really wanted out of a computer, out of an operating system. Okay, so I did have to go on the internet and look. I was just having a thought, and I probably should have mentioned this back in Windows, when I was talking about Windows 98. There was that infamous moment where Windows 98 did the blue screen of death right when Bill Gates was introducing Windows 98. For some strange reason, I thought it was Windows XP, but I was wrong. I admit that. But either way, it was just, I don't, it's pretty bizarre that I'm actually finding it difficult to come up with the words really to talk about XP. I used XP for a very long time. I think a lot of us did. When Vista popped up, oh boy. Vista was another one of those operating systems like Windows ME that was less of a new operating system and more of a stopgap measure in between. But I'll get into that in the next video. So, there you have it. That's all. That's basically my take on Windows XP. It was very good. I mean, for me, as I recall, it was pretty stable. I really did not have a lot of problems with XP. Even though I probably, here in this virtual environment, I've got a whole lot of old games that that are compatible with XP. I'm just gonna give a shot, see if I can actually still if I can play them using the virtual machine. Probably fail dramatically, but hey, maybe that'll be for another video. But as far as this one, hope you enjoyed it. And my next video, of course, will be talking about Windows Vista. So, until then, hope you have a good day. I'm Nariko Murakami. See ya.